Let's see about next. So we can start. He's not on, but when he lists, we'll all mark it down. We'll go ahead and start.
All right.
If you want to call it.
Well, it's 5:33 p.m. Open forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address city commission on any matter of public business, except public hearings. Comments related to public hearings will be heard when the specific hearing begins. I don't guess we have anybody.
No.
So, consent agenda, any commission member may request an item on a consent agenda to be taken up for individual consideration. Item 1, consider approval of July 11, 2023 regular commission meeting minutes as recorded.
I move that we approve consent agenda item number 1 as presented.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Workshop items. Workshop items are for discussion only. No action may be taken on items listed under this portion of the agenda other than to provide general direction to staff or to direct staff to place such items on a future agenda for action. Number 2, 2023-24 fiscal year budget workshop. No action taken. This will be for discussion only. So we'll turn it over to our city manager.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to be going through just the PowerPoint. You do have an updated, and I gave this to you last time, an updated budget letter as well. And so you can, I mean, that's got more information in it. You can read through it, and I have updated that from, what you got to, what was it, 2 weeks ago. So that has been updated. So we did get the certified values from Stevens County Appraisal District. Unfortunately, the preliminary values were like 286 million and the certified came in at 283. So it's actually a little bit lower than the preliminary numbers. I will say Will did offer to come and talk to you guys. So if you would like him to be here to kind of talk about the appraisal process, he can be here on, next August 1st, next Tuesday. Let me know if you want that before noon tomorrow. And that way we can get it on the agenda if you do. He's offered that. What I can tell you is, I have attended the public hearing, the board meetings that they've been having. I know their goal has been to try to really get better values associated with the properties. One of the things also is not only bringing the values up, which I know a lot of people don't like, but they haven't really been at market or even, appraised values. They've been very low. And so there's been a push for the last couple of years to try to do that. Now, of course, COVID, everybody was really experiencing stagnant values across the nation. So we weren't unusual there. If you look at the history, you can see, in 2020, they actually even went down a little bit. During COVID. So the pictometry project that he's come and talked to us about, that we're, participating and paying for, excuse me, that primarily is trying to get those values in that new development that's happening in the unincorporated area. Pretty much it's easier to keep track of that here inside the city limits. But outside the city limits is harder, but that's what that pictometry program is meant to pick up more detail on land improvements that have not been, reported. So you see that history there. We'll go into basically, I'm going to try to stay very straight here, the truth in taxation process. And what that does is basically, this is just a very simplified version. Every taxing entity unit has this sort of process. We're drafting a budget, we're calculating the tax rate, we're publishing notices, we're holding public hearings, we're adopting a budget and a tax rate. And this is all prescribed by the Texas Tax Code, Chapter 26 in large part. And then the setting the tax rate process itself, Senate Bill 2 happened in 2019, a couple years back, and the goal was to try to increase the transparency of the tax rate setting process. I will say my opinion was that was not accomplished. I think the tax rate setting process is very convoluted and complex anyway. And when you add complexity to it, you add variables to it, you change terminology, that is hard for anybody, even people who have been in the business for a long time, to keep up with. And is just really confusing, even for people in the business. So what is now called the no new revenue rate, that is basically the rate that provides the same amount of revenue received last year. It used to be called the effective rate. Okay, and I think people were starting to understand what the effective rate is, and then they changed the term. The voter approval rate, basically that's the max rate allowed without voter approval, except for cities under 30,000. That's essentially 3.5% over the no new revenue rate, which used to be the effective rate. So the process before Senate Bill 2 was you had that effective rate, you could not go over 8%. Right, or it would be rolled back. You could be subject to a petition to roll back the taxes. Well, what they did was they changed that effective rate to no new revenue rate. They lowered that rate down to 3.5%. And now it's called the voter approval rate instead of like the rollback rate. Okay. Is that clear? The de minimis rate is basically an option for cities that are under 30,000. So smaller cities that have, it allows them more flexibility. And essentially that is a rate that is equal to the sum of the no new revenue, maintenance and operations rate, plus a rate that when applied would generate an amount of taxes equal to about 500,000 plus the current debt rate. So you can see from that, that sounds convoluted, and it is. But essentially, as long as you're under that, cities that are under 30,000 population, that are under the de minimis rate, and they're no more than 8% over that voter approval rate, they are not subject to an election. Now, if they set it over 8% of the voter approval rate, they're subject to being petitioned for a rollback. And if they set it above the de minimis rate, then it would be an automatic election. Okay, those are the three criteria. The unused increment rate. So what that is Senate Bill 2 introduced this when you didn't use, let's say the voter approval rate was 1.00, but you set it at 0.90. So you would bank that 0.10 or 0.01. You would bank that. And you could use that then maybe the next year and you could go over that voter approval rate. Okay, so that gave cities some flexibility from year to year, because every year it fluctuates. Sales tax is very volatile, with COVID. That was, different anyway. So what they did this year, though, is they are phasing out the use of being able to use that banked unused increment rate. So they're basically trying to do away with that. So that's what you got, and that is all. You can find that all for your easy reading pleasure in chapter 26 of the Texas Tax Code. Okay, so what we did was, once we got those, we had to recalculate everything. Our new revenue rate, based on the certified values of 283, 363, 231, is 0.91750. The voter approval rate, maintenance and operation, is 0.84599. The debt rate is 0.25510. The voter approval rate adjusted for sales tax. And what that means is we use that because a quarter of our sales tax, 1/4% of our sales tax goes to reduce property taxes. Okay, so that voter approval rate adjusted for sale tax then for us is 0.97818. The de minimis rate is 1.16224. And again, that de minimis rate, everybody calculates it no matter what their population is. But really it's only applicable to cities under 30,000 if they're going to use that rate, which we did. So using that de minimis rate rules, the proposed tax rate is a little bit higher than what I told you last time based on the certified, on the preliminary, it's 1.05471. Okay, so again, that it must be lower than the de minimis rate, which it is, it's lower than 1.16224. And it does not exceed the 8% over the voter approval rate. So that rate we cannot exceed is 1.05643. And we're at 1.05471.
Ain't close.
Came close.
Question real
Yeah.
quick, and this, you weren't here, so it may be more for them. But in that first slide, it had, the property value growth of nearly 100 million since 2020.
Mhm.
In my understanding, that means in 2020, the city is getting about $1 million less in property tax revenue, is that correct? With 100 million
It
value.
all calculates out.
Well, yeah, well, what calculate that to be is a different, but generally the same.
I mean, plus or minus a couple 100,000 or something, right? Like,
Well, it's hard to say what that actually is as a tax
so I
rate.
can't look at the 189 million and then look at this, this tax rate in 2020 was $1.04 or something. And can't come up with,
Oh, yeah, you can, absolutely.
and the difference from 23 to that is
Yeah.
about $1 million ish.
I see what you're saying.
Is that, I'm asking, like, is that correct?
In property value, yes,
Okay, but
not
not,
in revenue.
yeah, but not in, but we get 1% of that money, correct, or that value, that 283 million.
Well, it's not
One-
that simple, that's what I'm saying though, like
Okay.
that, it's not that simple, I
that's
wish I
fine.
could say yes, but it's not that simple. Because there's too many other variables in the equation.
Okay, that's fine. I was just kinda curious how we having spending that much in 3 years to still be like not big time in the green.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I will say, that I think that we are, like, if you compare the budgets that I saw whenever I got on from some of those years, we were really tight, and now we have built up a little bit of a general fund, we have built up.
Exactly.
Or sorry, so we have been spending more,
Yeah.
but it's.
No, that's great. I'm
Yeah.
glad we are.
No, I
just
see what you're saying.
I was like, man, $1 million in 3 years, that's a lot of money.
Well,
we could
and you'll
do
see
stuff.
that in the funds, so what you're saying, yes, and you will see that in the fund balance, which I'll show you.
No,
So,
We
Um,
we were down to some dire straits about 5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
well, I don't know if you want to tell that story, it was, yeah, it was scary, it was touch and go.
Yeah,
That's fine. I'm glad, I mean,
But yes, I mean, we're in a much better
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
3 years later than we were 3 years ago. But it's not as much, it's not really $1 million worth. And if you look at the revenue and, I mean, I'm comparing to last year, the prior year. But I can get you, I can make a chart to where I can at least compare the revenue, the actual, what we collected, and then the expenditures, for a
yeah,
5 year
just so I can
history.
see, because
Yeah.
this is my first time doing this, so I was just kind of like, wow, that's.
And I can
pretty
get that
cool.
for you. I do show you, this year from last year.
Okay.
Yeah,
What was it? 112, 113 or something?
it was,
like that?
yeah, it was
yeah,
About five
112
years.
and,
First come up, yeah,
a few years ago.
yeah.
yeah, and well, in fact, you'll see it here on your next slide. But here's the 10-year history of the tax rate. And so, yeah, in 2020, that's when it was 112.
I was somewhere, you was somewhere in there.
Yeah, and then,
You bring your checkbook.
No,
What you not want to donate a little.
not yet.
so this is where, I mean, kind of getting to what you were saying, if you go to the next slide. So here, what you're seeing is in 2022. Okay, so you're taking the average value of a house here, and the way that's calculated, that's not a market rate. Just by the way, that is based on the appraisal district's rates. Okay, because the market rate, like in 2023, I mean, you can find a lot of average values for the city of Breckenridge. I mean, one is 175,000, but here it's saying it's 92 or let's say 93,000. So I mean, there's some discrepancy there because these figures that you see there are based off appraisal districts figures, not market rates. So I just want to make that clear. But if you compare last year, so the average value was 88, the tax rate was 102, so that means the city tax was 898. This year, the average value's up, right? So it's 92, almost 93. The proposed tax rate is that 1.05471, and that city tax then calculated on that is 979. So that average tax increase based on those figures would be $81. That makes sense?
Is that, when you say market rate, does that have something to do with the homestead exemptions?
Well, that includes homestead exemptions, yes.
That number?
Mhm. But that doesn't, I mean, again, remember the appraisal district is trying to bring up not only their market rates, but their appraisal rates to be closer to what is kind of the going rate. But obviously, they're not gonna do it in 1 year.
Right.
So I think they've been trying to do that for the last couple of years because the rates I mean, the values are very low, and that's one of the reasons why our rate is high.
Correct, there's like, if there's a certain amount of discrepancy between those figures. Some of the taxing entities, like the school district, gets hit with funding.
Correct.
Yeah,
Does the city get penalized too, or is that just another school finance thing that they get hit?
well, I think they get hit more.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
And
they
the
get
county
hit more.
does too. 'Cause there's
County
one that
does too.
said, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, and so now we're kind of getting into, I got some typos here,
It's coming up on here.
Huh?
They can't see it.
well, now I'm gonna find it on here.
Well, there's a couple actually, but anyway, so what this slide represents is the water wastewater funded debt. So that we have been paying out of the general fund, we're switching it over to the water wastewater fund to free up that capacity. But what I wanted to do here was just kind of summarize that middle column is what our payment will be this year, well, this next year. Okay, and that's 683,544. That column on the far right is showing what the outstanding principal and interest is. So on 2012, and this is after we have a payment, we make payments March 15th to March 30th, and then 9/15, September 15th. And then this year, remember, we're also making the extra $1.469 million payment on our debt. So these figures that you see are after those things have been paid in September. This is the outstanding balance. So the principal and interest is what you see on 2012 that you see them there. I don't have to read through them. Okay. And then the next slide is basically the certificates of obligation that we're working on now. And I did talk with our financial advisors today, and they now have the certified values and they're looking at the current market rates. I mean, this could change between now and Monday when they're going to lock everything in. But right now, we set at a rate at an amount not to exceed 9.1 million. Right now, it's looking like it could come in at 8.5 million, around in there. So we'll see what that actually ends up being. Now, I did just one caveat, and I've got a little asterisk there, that first column, I just wanted to let you know, the streets that are underway. Those are, that I have listed there, those are primarily sales tax, right? I mean, that is what we're paying rate on, mostly out of sales tax. The rest, the 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10, parks and the public works facilities, that's what's going to be paid for from the certificates of obligation. And you see, again, this is a draft, the streets are a draft list based on pricing and water, wastewater line replacements. So we've got the 22 A and B debt that we have right now going on, this in design for water, wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant improvements, and then additional collection and distribution lines. So depending on where those are, this list of 2 to 5 years, you know, could move around a little bit. And then the parks, I mean, this is basically what we're looking at. We're replacing the playground equipment, installing the sand volleyball court, foundation park improvements, Booker T Park lights, a dog park, pool filter install, tarp generator, moving the electric transformer and a mower. The electric transformer, do you remember, if you're looking at the building, it sits over to the right. Encore has notified us that that really probably should be moved. And so it's, you know, it's 60,000 or so to move it. So, you know, this is a good time to use those funds to move that. We normally don't have that kind of money sitting around a lot. And then the public works facility, again, basically removing and replacing the current equipment carport, if you will, from the bottom shop area up to the top shop. And that's what that project is. If you have been down there, it's like a tornado came through there. So, I mean, our equipment is not being protected.
It has needed it for years.
Yes, it has.
Years and
It
years.
didn't just start 5 years ago. It's
Yeah.
been
Oh, no,
that
Lord,
way
no.
for many, many years, unfortunately. Okay, so staffing levels, some of these slides you've seen, so I'm going to kind of run through them. You saw the staffing levels. This just gives you a breakdown of what it looks like. We have 68 full-time employees, and currently we have 11 vacancies. If you remember last time we talked, it was 15 vacancies. So we have onboarded some people, but I will tell you, I know we're going to lose 2 more soon. So it's kind of just a revolving door.
HR's been busy.
Yeah.
I do think it's getting, you know, the increase in pay that is included in this budget, I think will help. So, and I think we've instituted internally some processes and systems that will help as well. So here's the general fund balances, and this is, Blake, you can see, yes, we do have that some extra funds, right, that we have been building up. I mean, we didn't have a fund balance before, and now we do, which is huge. The good news, I mean, when you look at this, I mean, you always, a budget is for 1 year spending. It's looking at 1 year in time. And so ideally, you want to have, you know, you can call it zero-based budgeting or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you budget for the expenses coming in and the expenditures going out, and they should balance, right? So that, and that's what you see, really. I think you've had some pretty good management, because there really hasn't been too much of a drawdown on the fund balance in the last several years, even though they've been tight. Certainly in 2020 and 21 and 22, we've gotten, that's where we're building up some. So that's where some of that money that we're talking about. And then on the water fund side, same thing, you see that same, and a lot of that is in as a result of the schedule of increases over 5 years from 2 years ago, from that water wastewater rate study. And those were predicated on several assumptions. One of the assumptions was the water wastewater paying for its debt, the water wastewater fund bringing up the market for the employees, buying equipment. Some of that stuff did not happen. We did do some mid-year adjustments, as we've talked about. And then, of course, we've got, you know, the increases that are built into this budget as well. And then the same scenario and trend you see on the water fund balance.
Speaking of water, are we pulling any from Lake Daniels?
No,
I didn't think we were.
and we haven't for quite some time.
Yeah. We're Hubbard's sitting at about 59% capacity and just a little under 10 foot low.
Yeah,
Mineral Wells this last week started implementing, even though they're better off we are, has already started implementing possible ways to save money cutting back. You know, if we just get some rain, we'll be in pretty good shape,
Yeah.
but
well, the one thing, yes, and I mean, they'll let us know, I mean, they, what when I say they, West Central Texas Municipal Water District,
right.
will let us, yeah, will let us know if there's, you know, emergency
Yeah.
rationing procedures that need to be implemented. Now, the good news is that our use of the water at Lake Hubbard actually goes up and Abilene's goes down.
Yeah.
So it's good for us now, but it's really only, I mean, we do have Lake Daniels, but it's really our only source. Abilene has another source, and that's why their take goes down and ours goes up, as does some of the other smaller cities. So on the next slide, you just see, this is just a snapshot of the total revenue, all funds together, the water, wastewater, and the general fund. So you can see there, I mean, how they compare when you look at where does the funding come from, when you compare all of it. So if you take all those funds together, property tax accounts for 22%, sales tax is 19%, hotel motel is 1%, fines, fees, penalty, licenses, permits is 7%, miscellaneous is negligible, water funds 29%, wastewater is 17%, and sanitation is 5%. When you look at general fund alone, which it really is its own fund, you can see that property tax makes up 46% and sales tax 38%. A lot of cities, and I'm not saying that, you know, sales tax is more volatile than property tax. Yeah. And so somebody like Addison, you know, that hits them hard when there's a slump in the economy, because most of their revenue is from sales tax and not property tax. So we have a pretty good balance in that sense. When you see the others there, and then I just put this there so you could see a number. This was a percentage on how it compares with one another, but this is, you know, what that number is for each one. And then we've got the sales tax history for several years. The last few receipts have been down from last year. So, you know, we keep our eye on that. You will see last year, I think we were a little too optimistic for sales tax in, you know, receipts revenue. We estimated 2.6. I think we may be a little bit short of that this year, unless August and September come in really strong. So what I've done is I've taken that down to 2.3 million forecasted for next year. And if we come in over that, which I hope we do, then we have extra instead of scrambling to find some. And then just as a reminder, our sales tax distribution, we have 2 cents. Locals can have up to 2 cents of that sales tax, and we use all 2 cents. Basically, we keep a penny for general fund. Okay, and that's what you see, that 1.175. General fund is dedicated for streets, 1/4% of the sales tax, which is gonna amount to approximately $293, is dedicated for streets. A quarter, which is $293,750, is reducing the property tax. And then, of course, a half cent goes to the Economic Development Corporation. And that's 587.5 based on the projections. If there's any questions, just let me know. I'll stop.
The alcohol and liquor tax, whatever it's called,
Mhm.
will that be, is that subject to the same 2% we can get, or?
That's a little bit different, but that goes, yes, I mean, that is calculated into this.
Okay, so it's in the sales tax, it's not something separate.
Yeah.
I just didn't know, because the EDC was trying to push
Right.
liquor sales being,
Well, I definitely think it can impact revenue.
okay.
So, I mean,
I didn't
I
know if
think
it was
our,
gonna be able to be.
Yeah, is it more so just because people are buying here as opposed to going to Ranger or Grant or,
Right.
But I didn't know if it was something on top of
but
that.
hopefully it's what they call that ancillary, economic development. So, yeah, maybe they're gonna come here to buy, to go to a pub. But they're also gonna be buying food, and maybe they're gonna buy gas on the way out of town, or,
Stop at Walmart.
right, stop at Walmart. So it's all those other stops they make while they're here that we hope they make while they're here. Okay, so this chart is just the general fund expenditure by function, again, just kind of comparing where that money goes expense wise, which is. Public safety, which is police and fire, takes almost, a big chunk of it, which is normal. 28% for police, fire 18, municipal court is 1. Facilities is 1, administration 9, non-departmental is 20, streets is 14, and public services, parks and cemetery is 9. Non-departmental does include debt payments, just so you know. Water, wastewater revenue, you can see there the water, that's what we're projecting. Water fund is 2.795, and then for the wastewater fund 1,601. And then the expenditure departments using collection distribution 22%, water treatment plants 22, wastewater treatment plants 9, McDaniels is 1, admin's 8. So now we're getting, you have this too, but this kind of lets you see, what the changes were year to year from last year. So generally, what you're gonna see is that the departments, I feel like we did a really good job in looking for cuts line by line. And they were given that direction and trying to make room for employee increases. So you'll see that a little bit later, but when you look at basically the total revenue for 22-23, it was 4.757700. And then you compare that to this year's 497,969. And so the difference is 160,000 basically. And you can see when you look at all taxes, that difference increase is 92,000, that top line. The light, and that includes property tax and sales tax.
How? I mean, I know you tried to explain earlier, but like, how is that so similar to, I guess, well, that's 22, 23, but even that was a $40 million difference in property value. I would think that's just, and we're going up another 3 cents plus 40 million in property value should equate to more than $92,000 difference.
I know. It's not intuitive, I'm
Okay,
telling you.
I'll just-
I would, actually, do you have a TNT worksheet you can show them? It's a 14-page document that's full of calculations like, well, this.
But I don't really want to know then.
Yeah, I mean,
I was trying to figure out earlier, I was like, I know I have to know this stuff, but. whew.
Yeah, I just like, cause
Yeah.
you know, like people like, oh, you know, the value's going up, your rates are supposed to go down, or, you know, dropping and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, you know, and I still don't know, but.
And it's just not, I mean, that's what I'm saying, it's not that transparent with
Yeah.
all the different variables that go into it.
I-
Now, part of it, again, I mean, take into consideration, I mean, if you go back to the voter approval rate. Basically, without adjusted for sales tax, which is reducing that property tax. That amount, I mean, you're looking. You know, the difference between 0.97 and 0.84,
What is,
the voter approval rate.
yeah, no, what do you mean, what do you?
I know, see, you forgot already. The voter approval rate is basically that rate that you shouldn't, you don't go over.
Right.
Other
Above
than
8% over
3.5,
that,
right,
or whatever, yeah.
3.5 generally, unless you're de minimis rate for a city under 30,000. But what I'm saying is, you see that saving, part of it is we're using our sales tax. $93,000 to help reduce this property tax for people. And so that's actually a benefit for them.
Yeah.
And even that, so what I'm saying is there, of course, I don't like paying taxes any more than the next person.
Yeah,
But so you're always gonna not like the taxes that you pay. But at the end of the day here in Breckenridge, some of that money is going back to help keep that rate down. And that means that's money we're not getting into our general fund,
On shopping, you're talking sales tax.
sales tax, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna see all of it, I mean, these are all the different calculations. And it's like, look here, you know, take it from line 21, and then you gotta go back to line 21 and
See the chief appraiser, he sends us the numbers. And it tells you what lines to put his numbers on, and so, and then as like she was talking, you get down to. Where's this sales tax?
Well, I wouldn't go into detail over there,
I
Diane.
was trying to about that sales tax.
Make him a copy.
it's just wild to me.
You calculate it.
There you
yeah.
go.
No,
Should be waiting.
It's
If
just wild. to
you
me
start
that-
You want to be like, oh, our property goes this much and our rate goes like this, it calculates that, but it's just, it's impossible.
It's not 2 + 2 = 4.
because in the storm, you take this and then you adjust it. And then
Equals three.
that-
They-
and it's just a bunch of formulas that.
Well, I'm glad I asked now. Now I know that it's.
Well, I mean, the thing is, yeah, you look at the rate, you look at the property values,
Yeah.
but it's like, well, no, it's not that simple.
90% of people see that,
That's
right,
yeah.
and they're upset, and I'm upset too. I'm like, crap, you know, like my value went up a lot and my rate's still going up. I'm like, kind of defeats the purpose, but
Yeah.
we're good. I'll shut up.
No, I've been working with the
When
good.
I came in as mayor 5 years ago, one day, the next day when Andy was here, he said, you need to go by First National Bank and sign the papers on the money. What money? He said, well, we had to, and it was a huge amount to make budget, to make.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to
To
make
make
it,
payroll.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you remember?
Yeah.
And I think we did that too, the first 2 years. Then after that, things kind of got better. I thought, am I gonna pay this back? You know, well, they had me sign. But anyway, I mean, it just tells you how much better things are. Girls are doing and everything.
If you do, I will show you. some.
Yeah, no, I'd like to know more about it, because I helped Will on the Stevenson County Appraisal Review Board, and I was kind of confused on that end too, so.
I'm telling you, people that have been doing, and I've been doing this for a long time, it's just very confusing and it's convoluted and it's hard to explain. even, you know, it just is. Anyway, so, but what I wanted to see from this chart, I mean, if you look at, you can see that, you know, I mean, our revenue going down, license, charges for service, franchise fees, fines and penalties. Not a lot, but you know, they're going down, the budgetary transfers went up a little bit. And then that's on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, again, you see there's a lot of expenditures are going down, even when you come down to the bottom. In 2022 is 4.7. I'm going to just say round numbers, right? 4.7 million on expenses, and we're at 4.8 million this year, which is 131,000 roughly in additional spending this year over last year. If you go line by line, I mean, you can see where some of those increases are. Some of these are also, we're changing, and I know we've changed a lot, it seems like, and I'm trying to get it to where it makes sense, but some expenses have been coming out of city secretary that really should be non-departmental. Some expenses were coming out of finance that really should be non-departmental, because it's more overall versus having to do with city secretary or finance. For example, the fees that we pay to the appraisal district. The IT, we were taking those in out of each department, where I'm trying to get those in one line item in non-departmental, so we can really track those a lot better versus trying to keep up with it by department. So you'll see, and I will send you this separate Excel sheet that has the explanations on it out to the side. But if you look down, so essentially our revenue, you know, this year is 4.9 million and our expenses are 4.8. So we have about 66,000 in unallocated expenses. And if you go to the water fund, you can see the difference there. The big decrease in charges for service over last year is you'll see that we actually went down in revenue this year. Last year, Stevens Regional Water District was basically estimated to take $200,000 worth of water from us, but that did not happen. And it's not going to happen this year either. They're just taking less. They built their own system over there, so they're trying to use more of their stuff than take from us. But they did come back online. They went off for a while and then they came back on. But they're that's why that you see some of that reduction. That's one of the impacts of that reduction in revenue. And then when you go down to the expenses, on a couple of things I want to point out here. The water meters, we reduced one full-time employee due to that AMI, the new meters that we have. And it was a natural attrition in that he left. I mean, he quit. We didn't fire him. But that's a position. We used to have 2 in the meter department, and now we only have 1, and we only need 1 because it is what basically Wi-Fi, right? And so we're not going house to house. Not to say that we would never have to, but by and large, it's coming right into the system. In the water treatment plant, and I didn't talk about this that much because I didn't have a final price, but right now we have 24/7 operation. Well, the person who works 12 to 8 is really there as a safeguard. They're not doing a lot there at the plant. Now, if something happens, they're there. And so that's good. But so what we are looking at, what we're proposing doing is reducing that to 4 full-time employees, taking that 12 to midnight shift out. reassigning that person to another department because we need some help in some other departments. But upgrading our SCADA system so that we can get emergency notifications. So this year, it will basically pay for itself because the expense of the full-time employee is about what that cost for the SCADA, updating the SCADA system is. But in the out years, we have that savings from that full-time employee. And then the other thing, and this is in the general fund, we had somebody at the garage and we basically took that department, that garage warehouse department out, reassigned that employee because of our fleet management system where that maintenance is happening. We're outsourcing that. And with newer cars, we're not going to need as much maintenance. So we're saving that FTE as well because of the fleet management. The expenditures, again, you see there, last year, the revenue was 2.7 million, the expenses were 2.4. So we should have unallocated revenue that will go to our fund balance of 320. Now, I will say what you're seeing this year in the budget, just to share with you how this is all projection and you just never know. In the revenue, we're projecting how much water people are going to use. And conversely, on the expense side, how much water we're going to sell, right? So I will tell you those numbers right now are down, but they're down on both sides of the equation. But that will impact this bottom line this year, I think.
Listen, it'll be a difference when my water bill comes in, because I'm trying to keep everything alive. And I'm watering 7 days a week here,
Oh, yeah.
here or there and everywhere, so.
So single-handedly keeping us.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, well.
I'm afraid to look at it, but
No, I'm trying, I'm not doing it 7 days a week, but, I'm trying to, but my gosh, it's just burning up, but, I mean, that's what we think. We think people are probably gonna be watering more in we had a pretty wet spring. But we think, August, September, we might catch up a little bit, but either way, on the revenue and the expense side, it should balance itself out. So for this year, there's not as big as one, but it's 2.7 in the revenue and 2.6 in the expenses. So about 100, a little over 100,000 in unallocated that would go to the fund balance. And you can see, the reduction or the increase there. Lake Daniels, we're doing more maintenance out there. One of the things I did want to point out here, so if you look at the water distribution line in on the expense side in 2023, it was 570,000, 831. And if you look at the expenses this year, it's 869. So what we've done this year is we have a department, it's called collections and distribution. And so it's the wastewater lines collecting and the water lines distributing, but that's Billy's team. We had it under 2 departments. So Billy Smith is the supervisor, you all know him, but it's his 2 teams. So one was water, one was wastewater. What we did, just from an accounting, everything point of view, we combine those departments all under water instead of keeping it separate because it just got really convoluted. So that's why you see that difference. It's not like there's that much, it is more of an expense, but what you see in there is what is Department 76, which was wastewater. And you'll see that cut on the wastewater side as well. And we moved the public works director from general fund to the water fund. So here on the wastewater side, you see last year, the revenue was 1.3, almost 1.4 million. And the expenses were, we were about 30,000 to the positive, unallocated. And then this year is 1.6 for the revenue, and for the expenditures is 1.29, so about 310 to the positive unallocated. So forecasted to go into that fund balance, which remember, part of that, the rate increase assumed certain spending that hasn't yet taken place. So it's in that fund balance to, it may be spent, for debt service. At some point, it may be spent for equipment. We do have 2 pieces of equipment in this year's budget, 2 backhoes that we are proposing be replaced. It's 5-year lease purchase program, $104,000 for each backhoe, but they're gonna give us $30,000 for a trade-in. And it's basically the payment's $30,000 a year. So we'll have 2 new backhoes.
What kind of percent of the non-departmental is the debt payment that you mentioned earlier?
A large part of that,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Good enough.
Like almost 700,000.
Okay.
So on this one, this is not everything, but by and large, these are the major increases, if you will, or increases and or reallocation of how we're spending the money. Okay, so the merit cost of living is 4%. So 2% COLA, 2% merit, which will be based on a performance evaluation. And then we have some equity adjustments for police and fire. So everybody else get 4%, or thereabouts, and police and fire are getting $1.50, which is substantially more than 4%, but we're really trying to, bring them up to pace. And so that expense is, $313,000. And then the fleet maintenance, which is basically your vehicle replacement program, if you will, is 226. Keep in mind, some of the line items you saw negative, some of those maintenance line items we're gonna be able to decrease because of this. Lake Daniels and Gonzales Creek maintenance, we've increased that a little bit this year, and that's 51.5. I know you mentioned and I saw somebody contacted us, and last year when I first got here, I saw a post on Facebook about, well, how come you're not doing that section between Harvey and Harding? And we didn't budget for it last year, and so we're trying to go in this year, and we already have removed the trees, and then we're gonna try to do in-house with our boom mower, that area that hasn't been done before. But that it is.
There's no exposed gas lines through there, is there? Because that's like where we couldn't do the boom mower by the school and stuff.
Yeah, no,
So,
well, they're all over the
shouldn't be.
creek, so.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they come from that, the ones over there by the church.
Yeah.
And then they may not, they may have to go in. Yes, we do know about the gas lines
Okay.
all over that creek,
Yeah.
not just in that area, they're
Okay.
all over.
I didn't know if they were in that section too or
I don't
not.
think they're exposed because they're not on all craters.
Right.
So
They're probably buried pretty well.
we know to look for them. Now, I don't know if
Right.
they are exposed over
Yeah.
there, but we know they are other places for sure. And that's why we went in with the spraying. We had, cutting down the cane
Yeah.
was the goal, and then the spraying. And, once they get in with the mower or whatever it is, we'll have to spray too. But it's gonna be ongoing. It's gonna be expensive, yeah. And then the fire department, Jaws of Life, that partnership project with the county we've talked about, 19,000 is our part. And the cemetery, it needs a new mower, it's just constantly mowing at the cemetery and parks. And parks is also getting a new mower, via the certificate of obligation. And so just some more, what I did on this page was in the fiscal year, kind of just summarized, but I tried to attach it to what our goals were through the strategic planning, and did it accomplish that? And so I think we did accomplish quite a few of those goals, but there is an increase of 0.03471 on the property tax rate. The existing debt for water wastewater moved from general fund to water wastewater. That's freeing up the available debt capacity to fund street, park, and facility improvements. And that is goals 1, 2, and 3. Increase the pay for all existing employees to bring closer to market, and that's goal 2. The vehicle replacement program with e-fleets is goal 1 and 2. Public Works, 2 backholes is goal 2. Fire department job of life, goal 1. Significant funding for contract mowing and Gonzalez Creek maintenance, goal 3. And then just a reduction of 3 FTEs, like I've discussed, due to streamlining and increasing efficiencies and transferring those existing employees to other departments where we needed them to fill other vacancies. And that's the meter, the garage, and then the water treatment plant.
Good job.
Now, Blake, I will tell you, I know you like a lot of detail, but if you read the budget letter, there's a whole lot more detail in here. For all of you, but I'm happy to sit down. I mean, I know you're new, these guys are old hat, but
I've only been here 2 years, so
oh, okay, for whatever reason, I thought you'd been here longer.
my family's been here, but I've only been here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to sit down with you.
You weren't even
but, so the next step, so we, we've got, can I bring my calendar? Budget calendar,
It's on
next week.
at the end of your.
No, it's not.
That is full.
We do have a meeting next week, and next week will be the, there's several items on the agenda, but one will be the. There we go. Certificates of obligation. We'll have the final number and you'll be voting on that final issuance, and then they'll go out and sell those. They should close by the end of August, September. And so there's been a lot of moving pieces to that. But so we'll have that meeting. At that meeting, you'll set the public hearing on the tax increase for August 29th. So there'll be a special meeting on the 29th, a public hearing, and then a public hearing to consider the budget on September 5th.
I will not be here September 5th.
September 5th,
I'll be gone, so.
okay. Well, we'll probably need to have confirmation, because we do need to have a quorum if we need to change the meeting. I mean, this is one of those things too, it's gotta be 15 days before this and within 30 days after this, and so. If we need to change it, where it's not on a Tuesday, we can do that, so I'll let Jessica get with you guys and just. If everybody else can make it, then that'll be fine, we just need to make sure.
I mean, there's a chance I could make it, but I'll be flying back into town from the East Coast, and it'll be,
Late,
my flight will be landing at like 1:30, so. It'll be,
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be kind of close.
yeah,
but-
That is a bit
Yeah.
sometime. Yeah.
well, and
That's
as
it,
long as we have a quorum, we're fine. But we do, we have to take these actions within a certain time frame, and they have to happen, so we'll make sure that we have a quorum. And then-
That's when the budget.
Yeah, I know, that's why I mentioned it right now, because.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? I mean, I know I've thrown a lot at you, please, read through these things, and I'm happy to sit down and talk with you at any time and go over anything. Yeah. I do want to publicly.
It's, like you said, it's crazy convoluted. And we appreciate y'all's hard work.
Lord, yeah.
Well, and I do want to thank the staff. They've done a phenomenal job with, they've gotten more involved in the budget this year, by design. And, but they've done an outstanding job looking for places to cut and, coming up with ideas to streamline things and increase efficiencies. Of course, Diane can punch in numbers till her eyes are crossing. So everybody's been, going above and beyond, so I'm really thankful for the staff that we have.
Yeah, good. Everybody good? 6:32. Let's
Yep.
go.
No action.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
When I